morning, everybody. Welcome to the April meeting of the Salt Lake City Planning Division Historic Landmark Commission meeting. As far as attendance this evening, we're just going to run a quick roll call. Babs DeLay. Yeah. I am here. Mike Bella. Here. Adrian White.
Here.
Emily Kearns.
Here.
Alan Barnett.
Here.
Let's see, Commissioners Getz and Abramson are excused for the evening. And so we have a quorum of 6. Starting through our agenda, we're going to first review the public hearing procedure. Michaela.
Hi, everyone in the audience. If you would like to speak tonight, there are cards that are outside on the table, and you get 2 minutes. If you're part of the general public, please fill out your name and your comments on which item. Please put which item you'd like to speak to and hand it to any of our staff, and we'll give it to the chair so that we call your name when it's time to speak to that item during the public hearing. Thank you.
Thanks, Michaela. First off, we want to approve the minutes from the previous meeting. I don't know if everyone had a chance to read them and or has a motion.
I can so motion, Mr. Axley, for the February meeting. We did not have a meeting in March, and I read through them, and I think they're what they need to be. So I make a motion that they be approved.
Second.
Okay, great. We had a motion from Mike with a second from Babs. Babs.
And I'm having, this is for the IT folks in the back too. I'm having a hard time hearing the commissioners just from a few feet away. So
And
if
I'm
we could turn
speaking
up
pretty
the
close
mics.
to the mic.
Pardon?
Usually it's a problem but I'm pretty close.
It is, but sometimes it's the volume that they're toying with in the back. So thank you.
Mike,
Yes.
Adrian,
Approve.
Emily,
Approve.
Alan,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. The motion to approve the minutes from last meeting, which was the February meeting, are approved. Moving on to the report of the chair and vice chair. I do not have a report tonight. Mike is standing in as the vice chair. Do you have any report?
I do not. Thank you.
Report of the director.
I do have something to report on tonight. I was asked by you all for a bit of an update on the Central City East Side RLS and ILSs that the city we've been trying to have conducted. And I wanted to give you a little bit of history on it. I'd like to give you even more, but I was advised by our attorney not to say bad things about people. So I won't do that. But I wanted to tell you it's been a really very frustrating process, which is why you haven't seen the results of those thousands of properties. Long story short, we contracted with a company that was great, and their team kind of fell apart and went to different companies. And then they subcontracted with an individual who wasn't able to provide the deliverables as we had specified as per contract. And our original contractor and the city worked tirelessly to try to get those deliverables up to snuff, and that did not happen. Good news is there's another fantastic subcontractor that we're working with that is doing tons of quality control, going out and taking hundreds of photos that weren't done, looking at periods of significance. We're not starting from zero, but that, I just wanted to explain the delay, knowing that this is an important project, and there's always a lot of development activity and pressure within Central City. And we also want to get that National Register nomination for East Side to the state. So hopefully this year we'll see this, but that's the update. Any questions? Okay, thank you. We're working diligently.
Thank you, Michaela. Next up, we have a opportunity for general public comments. Anyone who wishes to make comments on anything not related to the public hearings should do so now. I did not get any comment cards for this, but if anyone in the audience would like to speak, now is your chance. Okay, seeing none. We are going to move into our first agenda item tonight, which is a zoning text amendment to clarify utility exemptions in zoning regulations. This is case number PLN PCM 2024-01352. And we have David here to tell us more about it. And just speak loud into the mic, especially with our volume issues.
Is it on now? Okay, perfect. Give me just 1 second while I just pull it up. Okay, so this is a text amendment. It involves utilities and zoning. It was initiated by Mayor Mendenhall, and the purpose of it was to clarify utility exemptions in city code and also clarify some of the language in that regarding footnotes. So I'll quickly go through the entire proposal. Some of it applies to the historic overlay, but not all of it. One thing is there's a section of our code and it exempts utilities from our zoning ordinance, and this includes things like telecommunication lines, public infrastructure, things that you see daily. I forgot, I'm blanking on the name, but the telephone wire lines. We've added government-owned antennas into that list, as well as fences or walls that restrict access to public utility sites. Those are the only two new ones added to that list. And then we've also standardized the utility-related footnotes and slightly tweaked the definition of utility. Some of the proposed changes that apply to the planning department are we've exempted public utilities from design standard requirements. We've added the option of administrative review for planned developments, and we're seeking to allow for administrative review for new construction of public utility structures in the historic overlay. The purpose of the design standards in the planned developments is that it's really difficult for utilities to meet zoning requirements and meet the standards as they're intended for buildings. So as we want to allow for an administrative process, since there's case by case and there's certain glass requirements, ground floor requirements that utilities would never meet. And so that was the purpose for the design standards in the planned developments. For the historic overlay, it's similar to that, but I'll get more into the historic overlay. So currently, the planning department already can administratively review new accessory structures in the overlay. If it's a new principal structure, we can't. And so we're seeking to allow for administrative approval for new essential public utilities if it's considered a principal structure. So like I said, we've already been doing administrative approval if it's considered accessory. This would only apply if it's considered principal. And in this case, there still would be a 45-day public notice. It would just remove the public hearing requirement. And the purpose of this is to streamline the process. Sometimes there are public utilities that we need out there as fast as possible, and the process can just make it too long. So,
Does that include microwave towers or, phone towers?
cell towers. I have a page that'll show it, but it doesn't include it. It includes antennas that are for public safety, but not cell towers.
Okay.
So I'll get more into that. But so there would be no public hearing required, but if it were something that we got a lot of public comment on, we would still refer it to HLC if we didn't feel comfortable administratively approving it. There's been times in the past where the planning department has referred items to HLC, such as the Rotary Park and Liberty Park, and there's been ADUs that have been visible from the street that we didn't feel comfortable approving, so we brought it to HLC. For public utilities, I think it's something that's case by case. Sometimes it's as small as a box, and then sometimes it's much larger, and we would determine if we felt it was large enough or there was enough public feedback, we would certainly still take it to HLC. I added this slide to try to clarify what is considered a public utility. This isn't necessarily, when I say public utility, I'm not meaning the public utilities department through the city. This is just anything that falls under public utilities. So the sewer, substations, gas lines, waste management, etc. And then I did compile a list. This isn't comprehensive, but I tried my best. The things that you see on the left, so these would be exempt, and some of them already are, and then some of them are the added ones. So if you see on the top left, that's to illustrate a fence surrounding a public utility. That's something that we added as an exemption. And then antennas for public safety. This I thought was a great example. It's an antenna right outside the public safety building that they use for their broadcasts. And then other stuff which already currently is exempt. In the middle, this one more applies to the historic overlay, and this is the administrative review. It would be certain things that companies or public utilities come in and they need, like, for example, like a bus. There's been, I don't know what it's called, but the bus electrical boxes, they've had to come in and bring those, and it's just kind of challenging for us to define where that would fall under. And so we're trying to allow for more flexibility when it comes to public utilities, especially in the historic district. Some things that are still gonna have to always apply or still comply with zoning are solar panels. They'll have to go through the historic process. Infrastructure, so public infrastructure buildings, cell antennas, private like internet providers, ground mounted utility boxes, and other stuff. So this is how the process has been going so far. On March 12th, the Planning Commission did forward a positive recommendation. They did ask that we take it to HLC, so that's why I'm here today, to see what you guys think about it. And so based on this, I recommend approval to City Council, and then we can turn it over to questions and comments.
Thanks, David. Any questions for David? Hearing none, we're going to open the public hearing for this agenda item. Any member wishing to speak has 2 minutes, and anyone representing the community councils has 5 minutes. I have one comment card on this from Cindy Cromer. So Cindy, if you'd like to start.
So I did manage to get something sent to you 24 hours ahead of your hearing. That's actually quite remarkable for me. Sorry for the short notice. I have a tremendous amount of history, especially in Liberty Park, on utilities. And I am very much opposed to waiving requirements in historic districts. Why should I, as a property owner, be held to a higher standard in terms of design and durable materials? If a utility can be built next to mine without the process required for my own building, additions to my building, or for new construction. And this is not idle speculation on my part, because I have a very prominent building created by public utilities right across the street from one of my investments. So I'm not just doing hyperbole here. Nothing that I say in the next minute should be construed as criticism of parks or of public utilities. In fact, former director of public utilities has twice save the day. And I outlined those examples in Liberty Park for you, the stormwater detention basin, where Jeff Nehemiah intervened, and the diversion structure, where again, Jeff Nehemiah intervened. The diversion structure, which had an approval from the Landmarks Commission, was not necessary. Was not necessary. And if there hadn't been a public process, I do not know how long that very expensive process would have continued. It was a county proposal that was not needed. There's an irrigation system that Park sponsored that was greatly modified as a result of the public process. Reservoir Park, I sent you a very interesting link from Fox News on that. Some of you may remember the pump building in the Avenues Historic District. These are just utility projects in historic public spaces. There are many, many other examples of proposals in our parks that were never built. I'm doing a tour in May of things that never happened in Liberty Park for one of the community councils. So I am asking you to, number one, consider what this might mean for people who have contributory structures and are maintaining them consistent with the design guidelines in a historic district. I really think that we need some general guidelines for what institutional buildings should look like in historic districts if we're going to short circuit the public process. Right now, we have nothing about what these buildings should look like. And one of the delays with the pump building was that Public Utilities thought it should look like a house. If you know the building, it does not look anything like a house. But the initial proposal did. I've probably gone over 2 minutes at this point. So thanks.
Thank you, Cindy. Anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak on this agenda item? Do we have any emails or?
I just want to clarify that this proposal isn't reducing the review. It will still be materials, durable materials, so just so that the commission is aware that we still are following the standards and the design guidelines, and we're not reducing materials. Just wanted to make material choices. So it's to have more administrative review. And a lot of projects, I mean, I personally killed some projects in Liberty Park, like a giant tree cell tower, because we actually have control over Liberty Park. Thank you.
So, Michaela, just let me clarify. So you're saying the change is not that there will be no review for utilities in the historic district. It'll just be administrative review. It won't come before the commission unless the staff deems
Bumps it to you if it's
decides that
substantial.
it's complicated enough or something that it should.
Correct. That
Okay, all right.
we're able to administratively
Thank you for the
review it.
clarification.
Thank you.
Before we launch into questions, I'm just going to close the public hearing, assuming there's no more comments. Okay, thank you. And with that, we can move into executive session.
Since you're looking at me, I can answer. You know, I read the staff report and went through it. It seems like there's a lot of things that are now going to be done administratively that previously came through here, and there's some wording that I think just indeed cleans up some of the language. Some of the footnotes were incorrect previously, so I would have no problem with recommending this to the city council.
Other thoughts?
I do. I guess I have to think. Clearly, small things don't matter. I mean, don't need to come before the commission. They're easy to handle for the staff. I just wonder if it's something as large as, something as large as a building. A building would always any other building in the district would come to us. So it seems strange to me that just because it's a utility that it would somehow shortcut that process. So it's in some ways, this almost seems like an issue of scale.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason for it too, because we're talking about essential infrastructure, like the pump house. The pump house, we had citations by the state. The city was literally eBaying, finding parts to keep that pump house actually viable. I think someone was electrocuted there. Staff didn't want to work on the pump house until we had exception after exception with the state. And if the pump house doesn't work, that particular pump house, we wouldn't be able to fight a potential wildfire. Downtown wouldn't have water. 200,000 homes wouldn't have had water had that failed during a, 2-year process. That's essential infrastructure, I think, and equity issues. The taxpayer did foot a very large bill to design that pump house.
I sort of wonder if that's our responsibility. If the pump house is failing, it's not because, I guess, for preservation to get blamed because the pump house is failing. That's the utilities department that dropped the ball on that. And so for us to have to make up for it by saying, oh, we'll just pass on reviewing the appropriateness of something in the historic district because the utilities department couldn't keep up their infrastructure. I understand there's
I'm
an
just
urgency.
thinking of the newspaper
an urgency
article
there. So,
as well.
Yeah, it was
right?
a pretty nuanced.
All of downtown doesn't have water because a pump house design can't be approved by the Historic Landmark Commission.
Yeah, it definitely delayed the process. I can remember it well, by months, if not over a year, I'd say, to build a pump house, which was a pretty important supply of sprinkler water, fire sprinkler water downtown. So.
yeah, and we're talking about the exception. And because of this exception, this one extreme case, we want to change the rules for everything. And suddenly, even if it's not an emergency, you don't have to go through the regular process. And,
I don't think it's
and
all
easy
for
to
the pump
point to
house.
it's easy to point to the outlying case and say we need to change everything for this outlying case, but it changes everything that's not the outlying case as well when you do that. So and maybe if the pump house, if that had just gone through administrative review, we would have gotten a good solution that it would have been just fine. So maybe it's not a big issue, but I just wonder when, like Cindy Cromer said, when everybody else has to go through the process, but then these guys, somebody's exempted because they can claim, critical utility status is just.
That's pretty important status.
It is, obviously it's very important status, but it doesn't trump everything else all the other rules. It's as if they just get a pass because they're utilities, just a blank pass. And that seems not right. It seems like it's basically utility companies or the city somehow doesn't have to follow the rules that everybody else does. And I'm a little uncomfortable with that.
As I understand, this has a process where there can be public comment and review, should it be contentious. My concern is there are a lot of historical and beautiful electrical substations and pump houses in the valley, and I feel like that standard can be replicated and achieved. I also have concerns, would this cover cutting down all the trees on a street? Because they need to put power lines through there, or?
No, this does not include cutting down the trees on the street.
Good.
I think, yeah, the trees would be in the public right away, so that would be through engineering and urban forestry. But I'd also just like to clarify that if a utility structure is considered accessory, we already review it administratively. And in most cases, they are smaller or accessory. The pump house example is kind of uncommon. It was considered a principal structure because it was on a vacant lot. And like I said, if it were a case where it was a large building or it was significant enough, we would still take it to HLC.
I'm just wondering, and I'm going with what you said, Adrian, about the pump house. I'm wondering, the example of the pump house, is that 1 out of 10, 1 out of 50, 1 out of 100 that have that sensitivity that particular pump house had? And I'm wondering then if indeed, as the city, if this passes, if you get to a point where there is something that's particularly sensitive, particularly visible, then it would come before this commission? Is there leeway to do that, or is it all or nothing? I guess I'm asking.
What do you mean by like, is
We
it?
can always bump it to the commission. Is that
Yeah.
what you're asking?
I'm sorry.
We can always forward an application onto the commission,
Okay.
like as you stated.
So
If it
something
wasn't
as sensitive
be
as
that
a pump house
prominent.
could still, yeah. So I think, for me, that would take care of that kind of thing, because I just feel in my gut that there's so many of these that are basic utilities that don't have that visibility sensitivity, that yes, I would be happy that staff take care of them and
Yeah, I think
administratively do that.
that's much preferable. So,
And since it's a new construction, if it's a principal structure, we still would have that public feedback period for 45 days. If we got a lot of feedback, then we certainly would bring it to HLC. We still have to notify all the property owners within 300 feet because it's considered new construction. So I just wanted to also make that point clear.
Would you be bringing that to us as a full public hearing or as a, just more of an informational, like
It's more
would we
just
be
a
voting?
public notice.
Okay. So not for a certificate of appropriateness, but for, yeah.
I can barely hear anyone over here. I'm so sorry.
If, let's say it is a primary structure, it's very visible, there's a lot of public comment, so you do say we're going to bring it to HLC, is that a full public hearing
If
where
took
we
it to-
issue a certificate of appropriateness?
To the HLC, it would be a full public hearing.
Okay.
Or if we didn't agree with public utilities, if it was ours, and we didn't,
Yeah.
as Cindy can attest to, the weird house rendering that we got in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, even at the pump house, there was a staff report, and we went through the whole process. So it wasn't like public utilities just got to do whatever they wanted because they're part of the city. So, yeah. Any other thoughts or a motion?
I can make a motion. Based on the information presented in discussion, I move that the Historic Landmark Commission forward recommendation to adopt this zoning text amendment to the City Council.
I second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion from Adrian and a second from Emily. Babs?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Adrian?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Alan?
aye.
And I am an aye as well. So that motion passes unanimously 6-0.
Thank you guys. Have a good night.
Yeah, thank you all. Before we move into our next agenda item, I just want to disclose that the applicant is a client of mine. So I'll be recusing from these next few hearings and letting Mike take over as chair.
Yes, as long as you pass me the magic white book. All right. And I've asked Michaela, and I think, can everyone hear me now? Okay. I've asked Michaela, and we're going to be talking about Trolley Square Ventures, and there's 3 different properties, 3 different numbers, and with your concurrence, would it be okay that we're talking about all 3 of these at one time? No? Okay. Then I'll take that back. So let's,
Well, wait a minute. Can we do that? They just need to make separate motions, right?
Yeah.
Would it
You
be your
can
pref-
talk about them. If you don't want to talk about them, I think you should talk about that.
yeah,
But you can talk about them all.
yeah. The only reason
Yeah,
I
you need
ask
3
is that,
separate motions, but you can talk about them all at once. You can have 1 public hearing. But yes, 3 separate motions on the record, please.
fair enough. Okay. So it's halfway between what I was thinking. Because it's the same owner, it's the same issue on 3 different properties. There would be a public hearing for all 3, and, you know, all of everything that we would have to do. So I was just trying to simplify that. So we can talk about them all at one time, but at the end of the day, we have to vote on them individually. Fair enough. Very good. Go ahead.
Thanks for the clarification. Good evening, members of the commission. I'll just pull up one of my presentations. They're all essentially the same. We are talking about demolition of contributing buildings in a local historic district. The buildings are located at 652 East 600 South, 664 East 600 South, and 665 East Ely Place. This presentation obviously is geared towards 652. I didn't know we were going to combine the conversation, but again, these presentations that I have are all essentially the same. So these types of requests are reviewed via the demolition standards that the city has adopted in 21A3420K. We have provided what I think is a fairly thorough analysis of these demolition requests for you. We provided a summary and discussed key issues regarding a couple of the criteria. At this point, planning staff recommends that the Historic Landmark Commission approve all 3 requests. This is a subject property at 652 East 600 South. I mean, you can see the state of that home. This is a contributing structure in the district. All of these are. This is a structure that was previously approved for demolition by the Historic Landmark Commission in 2017. The property at 664 East 600 South, 2 doors down, was also approved for demolition in 2017. Here are the locations of the properties. You can see 600 South here. This is Trolley Square. This is the walkway over 600 South. This is 652, 664, and then you have 665 East Ely, a little bit further south, all surrounding the parking lot for Trolley Square. This is located in the Central City Local Historic District, and the zoning is FBUN2.
And can I just, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but tonight, if we're going to discuss all 3 of those properties together, can you maybe pop that slide back on? Because it's important that the commission identifies which building that they're talking about on the record.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption, Lex.
This summary of findings is in each one of your staff reports. Essentially, of the 5 standards, they comply with 3 and don't comply with 2. The first that they don't comply with is that the fact that the historic integrity of each site is still evident. Therefore, they don't comply with that. And also the base zoning of each site does permit land uses that would allow the adaptive reuse of those buildings. So they don't comply with that standard as well. They comply with all the others.
And can you just, for my memory, tell us why they're contributing?
In 2013, a survey, a reconnaissance level survey was conducted. Again, it was adopted, and it was the opinion of the consultant that we hired that all of these buildings maintained their essential form, a lot of the elements, and therefore remain contributing to the district. And so again, based on the information in the staff report, it's the staff's opinion that the demolition request meets the applicable standards, 3 out of 5, for the demolition of a contributing building in the local historic district, and therefore we recommend that the Historic Landmark Commission approve the request. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to entertain those for you.
I do not. Any?
One other item. I did receive one set of comments. Those were downloaded for your purview earlier today. They were from Cindy Cromer.
Can you tell us what those comments were? They were just downloaded today, so I haven't seen them.
Sure.
I can read them to,
Looking for the summary
or
of
have them, I don't know.
I can just read them if you'd like. That'd be helpful. Oh. I can read them if you'd like. Okay. So as I said, when the city wanted a COA to remove over 50 mature trees from Pioneer Park, you cannot really expect me to say anything nice about the demolition of what I consider to be 4 contributory structures in the Central City Historic District. I'm going to try to put this request in context with some numbers. 2012 to 2013, the consultant for the survey of the Central City District indicated that there had been 50 demolitions of contributory buildings in the district since its adoption in 1991. Since then, the demolition of the house on 700 East, owned by the other side, Biskupski overturned HLC's recommendation. The damage from the fire was not extensive. The failure to maintain the structure was epic. Burning of the Covey House on 300 South, most common comment from the members of the community, surprised that a fire hadn't happened sooner. Delisting of the 2 mid-century commercial buildings on 700 East. I expect this pattern of circumventing the economic hardship ordinance to continue. It is inequitable to use the same standards for contributory status in Central City as in Yellowcrest. Central City's historic district is not unique in losses. Biskupski overturned the HLC's decision on Bishop Place in the Capitol Hill Historic District. The state is demolishing fabulous contributory buildings on First Avenue. Central City is, however, experiencing development pressure which far exceeds those of other historic districts, and the updated survey has not been forthcoming. So what can I write that is not a tantrum? And then she goes into, so 664 East, 600 South. I do not agree that this building has lost its contributory status because it has been moved. It was relocated more than 50 years ago. The story of moving it is part of the history of the neighborhood. Are we only talking about architectural preservation, or are we talking about historic preservation? 658 East, 600 South. This building was terminally damaged in a frightening fire. The building, while part of the historic streetscape, is not part of the application you're considering. Then 652 East, 600 South. The demolition of this building was previously approved based on economic hardship evaluation. I am not going to argue that the previous decision should be reversed. And then 665 Ely Place. Without question, the building is the most important of the 4 because it is unique in the in the historic district. Because its scale is the essence of the modest working-class housing on interior courts, and because it is unaltered, because of 2 serious conversations to reconstruct, it is within the historic district. There should be substantial documentation of the building. So these documents should be preserved at state history. So please, stipulate that the documentation of 665 East Ely Place be placed in state archives, and then consider the standards appropriate for designation of contributory status in the Central City Historic District going forward. Given the city's bad decisions about office uses, it's amazing that any historic housing has survived. And then Cindy Cromer.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Any other questions for me?
I'm not sure when to ask questions because some of the questions apply to the other properties as well. But in the materials, I understand from the materials that all of these properties were approved for demolition in 2017. I did not realize until now that that the one that we're talking about now, the 652 East, was because of economic hardship. I wasn't aware of that.
That is inaccurate.
That inaccurate? Okay.
Yes. It was approved for demolition and it never happened.
Okay.
And
all right. That's helpful to clarify. So I understand that. The other thing, if I recall correctly from what I read, the staff recommendation in 2017 was against demolition, and the commission then did approve demolition. I'm curious why the staff recommended against demolition now and is now recommending for demolition. What has changed there?
That's a good question. I want to make one point of clarification. 665 Ely Place was not approved for demolition. It was approved for relocation. So the Landmark Commission denied the demolition of that building, this structure here.
Oh, okay.
It's the red building.
These two were approved for demolition. This was not. The reason for our change, there was, when these were heard before the Landmark Commission back in 2017, that portion of that meeting alone was a 5-hour discussion, and there was an immense amount of information that brought to light at that meeting. And so, one, we've received new information as staff that we took into consideration when we were writing these staff reports. 2, our standards have changed slightly, and we needed to take that into consideration as well. Anything else that you can think of why we have recommended approval?
No, I wish Alan Roberts was here. Because yeah, it was 5 hours of a discussion of the boundaries of the district. There were some pretty great points made about the block face and about Central City and the degradation of this block based over time.
Does that help?
That helps.
So this proposal is only to include the demolition of these contributing structures and not the approval of this massive.
No, that is not on the table this evening. That's a whole separate process through new construction, and that would come before the Landmark Commission as well.
And so this lot will just sit vacant. Is that correct?
Until
Before they can demolish, they would have to come to the Landmark Commission with plans for new construction.
Do they have plans for this new construction other than, is this the plan?
They have not been submitted. I have seen those elevations, but we don't have any formal submittal for the new construction at this point.
We've seen submittals, but the market's changed. There have been a lot of changes. And I imagine, I can't speak for the applicant, but I imagine there'll still be changes.
And just for historical record, in the standards that we had before, they were required to submit their plans for the new construction, and they did, but it never moved forward. Sure.
I wanted to clarify also, so the property in between 652 and 664 that had the fire, that has been approved for demolition?
It has been. When a structure is deemed a public safety hazard by the building official has the authority to approve that demolition, and that's what has occurred.
Okay, so regardless of what happens, what we decide here tonight, that one in the middle is going to be demolished.
Yes, that has already been
That
approved.
demolition permit has already been issued. Okay.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, hearing none. Let's move into the applicant presentation. And I'll remind the applicant that they have 10 minutes total. Please state your name, and you really have to get very close to the microphone to be heard.
My name is Jory Walker. I'm the principal architect for Beecher Walker. We're working with Cosgo Tsunami and the Trolley Square people to try to figure what to do on this property. We cannot submit any designs or anything until the property is resolved what's on the property. And so planning staff will not look at anything until we know that we can actually build on the property and have these buildings taken care of. So at this point, we're just going through that process first, and then we will go working through staff to figure what we're going to design there.
Dustin Glazier, I'm with Beecher Walker.
Douglas White, I'm the attorney with Trolley Square.
You have to talk to the microphone, please.
Sorry,
You have to turn it on.
that helps too. Thank you. My name's Douglas White, I'm the attorney with Trolley Square. I'll ask you to excuse Mr. Simnani tonight. He had to be in California, and or he would have been here as well. We have been, just as a brief, we've been.
I'm sorry, you really do need to speak into it for us to hear. I know it's cumbersome.
It's okay. How's that?
Thank you.
Okay. I was looking through my files last week in preparation of this hearing, and I pulled out the original notice of zoning change on this piece of property. It was virtually 10 years ago. Mr. Simnani bought the Trolley Square in 2013, and these houses and others along that block actually came with the package deal. Trolley had fallen into financial problems, and Mr. Simnani stepped up and does what he does. So we've looked at this for a long time. We've talked to probably every major developer in Salt Lake City and other states, and we have beat ourselves up time and time again about this. What do we do here to make it work? We've been in numerous meetings with the city officials. Lex Trauber has been very helpful in trying to, as I say, build my ship in a box. This property's 3.92 acres, but it has 14 sides. And that causes all kinds of issues. These houses have been looked at several times by some very, I believe, competent people. And I would like to say that we're a bit of conservationists ourselves, and we've done a fair amount of that, but we're here basically as a last resort as to what to do with these homes. So we've read Mr. Trauber's report word for word. We've discussed it. We've debated it. We agree with most of what he says. Of course, our analysis might be a little bit different, but nevertheless, we believe that there is good faith, substantial compliance with the code, and believe that these houses are candidates to be demoed.
I had an opportunity, my background's kind of crazy. My parents, I grew up in Michigan, a town called Kalamazoo, Michigan, and my parents owned antique stores, and they bought old historic homes and restored them. So I grew up in a house called the Henderson Castle. It was built in 1890 on 9 acres in downtown Kalamazoo, Michigan. It was built by the Henderson Arms Regalia person that did it, and it had a ballroom on the 3rd floor. So I grew up loving historical architecture and loving that. I just am working currently doing a place in Italy right now in Monforte, about a 9,000 square foot villa that I'm doing the drawings on. So I love historical architecture, and I got a chance to walk these homes. And what's happening is, when they were looked at in 2017, think about 5 more years of no roof, no power, no water, vagrants. I walked in these homes and was scared to even touch anything. They were so badly demolished and deteriorating and falling apart. So as I wrote my reports and looked at them as an architect, I felt like they're just deteriorating more and more. And so the last 5 years have been very hard on them. So I did my reviews based on walking in them, looking at them, seeing architecturally, historically, are there things in there that are contributing, that are worth salvaging? And there really wasn't, and that was kind of sad to see. But it's what happens when you have no roof and the water is running through the building and the walls are crumbling and the foundations are crumbling. They just become hazard. And so it was sad, but it's kind of where we're at. But it also is an opportunity to find a new birth for this area, and that's what we're hoping to do. And so we can't move forward as architects until you guys help us understand what we can do with these properties.
Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I've got one. I've got one.
Excuse me.
Are there any plans? I felt like there was a lot of, I went there, and I felt like there was a lot of opportunity to salvage the building materials. There's a lot of pillars, and there's some beautiful antique glass. There's some sandstone block. Are there any plans to hand that over to a salvage person?
We are working on that. I'm aware of some people. I've had some people contact us on that just this last week. We intend to, whatever could be used somewhere else, we're more than happy to help bring that.
I think you understand Cosgrove Tsunami and his background and what he's doing at Trolley. He sees value, and he'd like to find some way to keep the value. So I think we're looking at that. But at this point, the buildings can't even be demoed until we bring a plan forward and say, here's what we're doing. But we can't even bring a plan forward until we know that they can be moved or something can be done to them. So we're kind of in that catch-22 that we can't really design anything and bring it to the planning staff to get it reviewed because we don't know if these buildings can be moved. And they say, well, we can't even look at this site because there might be a building right in the middle of what you're designing. And so we're just trying to get the cart going. But I think there are, with knowing Cosgrove when he's doing at Trolley, I've walked the property with him, and we take castings from some of the bases and some of the stuff we're making. We're working on a fountain right now in the front of it. And I said, let's use some of the castings from some of the metal braces and stuff and make that into a fountain. And so he sees reusing of things that we can reuse. So I think there's opportunities there.
The check and the balance to what Jory was talking about is the fact what the code says is we can't, even if you grant permission, we can't demolish them until the new construction is approved. So yes, they're going to sit there until such time that Jory gets his designs together and we can get back here and talk about how to do it. But they're still going to sit there until that time.
Pulling together concepts and talking to staff and looking at all the guidelines so that we can show Cosgrove's team what's possible, and so he can run some numbers and see if it makes any sense financially at this point to do them, because it's a large expense to do what we're doing right now to get to this point, and he's paying for that expense, and so we're trying to show him what is possible, but we still have to go through all the approval processes.
So then I guess I have one other question then, and I understand exactly what you're saying. By taking all three of the structures down, you make the package a bit more attractive to potential developers. That's really what's saying. And I guess I'm reading into this is that the two projects on 600 South, those are a little bit different than what's happening on 7th South, or 7th East rather, because 7th East is a viable house. The other two that I've seen don't look like they're viable at all, or they're
Let me address
all three of them.
Yeah, it's a good point. Last year, the house that was on the corner, I'm going to call it 634 on your map. 634 was not a contributing house. We had a fire there, the people in there staying overnight. The prior owners put a new roof on it. Several things went on. Folks were living on the front porch. We couldn't control it. And the city allowed us to take that down. That did not come under the jurisdiction of the HLC because it was not a contributing structure. The house next to it, getting to my point, is 632. I've been working with the city. We filed an application actually in December. There was a little problem with your system. It was refiled this week, kicked it out. 632 is being lived in at this time, and our proposal is, because we recognize it's worth saving, we're going to move it. If we have to take it apart brick by brick, and we probably will, because I've had movers look at it and they tell me no. So we are proposing, and you'll be seeing that in, I don't know, another month or so, that we're going to move 632 to a block away over on 600 South, to a lot that we have secured over there.
And I think one thing to also clarify, which I think is a really important, is that in the past, the Cosgrove Tsunamis group has been looking for other developers to come in and develop the property. And that's where it's always been hard, is that I've worked on this thing 3 or 4 times over the years, in the last 20 years, come across my desk. At this point, Cosgrove Tsunami is going to develop it himself. And so we feel that we're not looking for developers to make proposals on the property. Cosgrove has decided that he's going to do it himself and develop the property. And so I think that makes it a different animal. We're not just trying to get these houses demoed so we can sell it to another developer to develop it. Cosgrove sees this as an important cog to help Trolley Square Mall become more, have more activity. So if we put some units here and people are living here and it becomes an active space where people can walk across to the mall and shop and eat, it benefits him by having this be a really nice development that brings in people downtown to his mall. And so I think having that is a different scenario than in the past. In the past, it's always been, oh, so-and-so is going to buy it, we got to get these houses done. And now we're actually moving with a team, with an owner who wants to do it for his property. So I think it's a different path we're going right now, which I'm much happier with and much more excited about.
Very good. Commissioners, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a difficult piece of dirt. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So now we'll open it to public hearing, and I will remind anyone that wants to speak that community councils have 5 minutes. Everyone else has 2 minutes. And if you do so, please state your name clearly. I couldn't hear you.
Is anyone here from the community council?
I'm not seeing anybody. Okay. And was there any emails concerning this?
No, sir.
Very good. All right. Hearing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And now at this point, ask the applicant if they'd like to offer any rebuttals. We didn't have any questions, so I don't know that there's anything to rebut, but you have a little bit of time if you need it, if you'd like to say anything further. All right, very good. So, commissioners, discussion? Let's just start.
I am a preservationist through and through. I'm going to say that from the get-go. And I do want to disclose that I actually discussed these properties with Alan Roberts months and months and months ago before this was on the agenda. But as I look at this picture and as we hear about these houses that are just sitting totally unlivable, the majority of the land that we are talking about is a parking lot, and I think that housing is way more valuable than parking and two houses that can't be lived in. I also think that Cindy made a great point that we could very seriously consider by having the 665 property documented and put into the archives for posterity's sake. So that's where I'm at with this project. I was really stressed about it coming in because I don't like approving demolition of buildings, but our city is growing so rapidly and housing is a huge problem that we need to be addressing. So I can't justify keeping these houses that are not even housing people when there's opportunity for people to live in this space.
That's fair. Babs, any comments? Any comments, Commissioner?
I agree that housing is important. My role as a commissioner is not to assure that we have enough housing. My role here is to safeguard historic resources in the city. And the question is whether these warrant safeguarding. I look at this, the findings that the staff gave us here. It talks about, sort of the standards of when a building can be, a contributing building could be demolished. And I don't think the two buildings on 600 South meet the standards here. The ones that I have problems with here, the streetscape within the context of the Historic Preservation Overlay District would not be negatively materially affected if the contributing principal building were to be demolished. And to say that the streetscape along here will not be affected by demolishing those two houses on 600 South is absurd. Clearly, there virtually is no streetscape. There's so to say that would not be the case, I think, is just absurd. And then the demolition would not create a material adverse effect on the concentration of historic resources used to define the boundaries or maintain the integrity of the district. We just heard from the staff that at some point somebody had counted up, was it from the staff? That 50 properties in the district have been demolished since it was created, since the district was created.
That was Cindy Cromer's letter, just not from staff.
Okay,
That
all
was
right. Thank you for the
from Cindy
clarification.
Cromer's letter.
But we've already seen it. We've already seen that this district is under attack, just one after another. We've approved other demolitions in this district, and if you go through this district is just barely hanging together with all of the new construction sort of ripping the fabric of the district apart. So I am really hesitant to approve demolition of anything that reduces the historic integrity of the district at all. And I feel like those two do. I have to say, the 665, which is sort of, I think it's a charming little house tucked away behind. But because it's tucked away behind, is not visible, you really have to get in there to see it. And it's not, I feel like that one is not one that, if it were demolished, would really affect the integrity of the district. And it's in rough shape. And I agree, they're all in rough or rougher shape. And that's, so it makes for a difficult situation. But as far as the standards go here, I'm like, well, I don't think, it feels to me like 665 Ely Place is the only one that really meets the standards of what we could say could be demolished. Otherwise, they just don't meet the standards. And that's, so my argument is that I'm not sure where that leaves the owners. I know that leaves the owners in a difficult place, although, you know, I don't remember if the garage behind 664 was, it seems like it was mentioned, and when I went and looked at it, I'm like, yeah, this building is in structural,
It's lean.
it's in bad enough shape, and it's not, it's there again, it doesn't play a key part in maintaining the historic fabric of the district. So it could go, and the backyards of those buildings could be cut way back, and that property could still be used for development. But I hate to see those two go, and I have a hard time saying yes when I can't justify it with our standards.
Yeah.
No matter how I may feel about it, and I know I saw 652, I know there's water just raining inside that house because the roof has not been replaced for 60 years. And so I know that it's they're not in good condition, but I still feel like the standards that I've been given to judge by don't really allow me to say, oh, well, it's in bad condition. If it said something about condition, but it doesn't. The only thing it says about condition is integrity, and they still have historic integrity. So my argument would be according to
Demolition
the
structures
standards.
don't get to condition.
Pardon?
The demolition standards don't speak to the condition.
Yeah.
does
I assume
speak to
economic hardship.
aspects of-
An economic hardship application would speak to the condition, but this does not speak to the condition. It only speaks to the integrity.
And
And the
economic,
integrity is there on,
but the economic hardship, often we run into that here, even though we're not supposed to talk about the finances here. You could pour several $100,000 into those 652 and 664. It's not economically feasible. So what do? Board it up until someday it will be? That the argument, oh, it's historic, we should save it, they're about to fall over. And I am here because I love history, I love my history of my city, but I'm also realist in the argument always being, well, you can get a grant for this, or you can get some tax incentives to do this, when it's just economically not feasible. So that's a lot of times why these properties sit and get worse and worse and worse. And that one is particularly bad, that I really believe will fall over if someone doesn't burn it up. And I'm surprised that all three of them haven't been burned up by now, by just squatters.
I hear what you're saying. 664 looks to me like, I mean, I don't know the condition of the interior, but a flipper would come in there and gut it, and the exterior is fine. As far as I could see, the exterior is fine. I don't know about the 652 because it's obviously not had a good roof on it for a long time. I do not know structurally what it may be like. So
Okay.
I don't know. I guess I wonder. You know, would I prefer that the owner come back with an economic hardship application? Because I'm not in a position. You have more experience with it than I do, Babs. But I'm not in a position to say what it would take. And so I will vote no. But I'm also making my case.
Well, I'll interject since everyone else has spoken. I too live in a 114-year-old house, and just like you, I respect old homes, but it has to be a home that has enough bones to put money into. And we when we moved into our house, we dumped quite a bit of money into it. I look at both of these houses, and the report talks about how 600 South has changed over the years, in particular this block, and that you have these 3, 4, 5 houses, 6 houses. Looking at the map, they're kind of on an island surrounded by parking. So I understand that part. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe there was enough value there to save, but I'm just not seeing it. So then I look at it as with my architect's eyes, you know, having a site that has fewer encumbrances, so that there's a viability to a more contiguous, you know, parcel, that makes sense altogether. And the hope from what we heard from the applicant is for this to then be sold, and there's a number of options that are possible. We don't know what those options are just yet, and we probably will see them in the years to come. So it's a hard decision, but these are two houses that are on parking lot islands that I just, you know, I'm sorry that they're there, but they're there. So that would be my comment, you know, to these. So I think we've all spoken. Is it
Let me just make one more comment. I'm also concerned about the house on the corner. We all know the house on the corner. It's very charming with the corner turret and all that. When these houses are gone, then it's on the island. And if that house, if someone was asking to demolish that house, I don't think we'd be having this discussion.
Agreed.
Partly because it's in fairly good condition, but also because it's so charming. And it's much easier to dismiss smaller, more modest houses than the fancy houses. And that also is another thing that I'm like, we always want to save the fancy houses, but like the regular people's houses, those are the ones that will be like, yeah, go ahead and demolish that one. So, and I guess I like the standards talk about, you know, substantially altering the streetscape. Where does it leave that one house on the corner when it's alone?
I think that would maybe come up when they come with their proposal for new
I
development.
guess how they treated that corner would be
Yeah.
And
a
we'll
concern
expect
to us.
sensitivity. We'll expect sensitivity, and I don't want the commission to think if you do approve these 3 buildings for demolition, that somehow that puts that one on the corner, on the chopping block. We have also been, I mean, honestly, we've been working for decades with Trolley. I'm sure they hated us during multiple meetings, but, you know, we have studied and studied and studied all of these buildings. And, you know, I know it's very difficult to look at demolition. It's really, and we are very serious about it in our office. You see what Lex's findings were for those 2 standards, and, you know, we don't really feel like there's much of a streetscape there, and that's why that was honestly our finding. And that's why we tried to prevent demolitions, stop kicking the teeth out, but happened over many years, right? And to let the commission know as well, even if these buildings are gone, it is not going to take the National Register, it's not going to be a detriment. All of a sudden, Central City or East Side will not be, you know, taken off the register or anything like that, just to put that to rest, if you're worried about that.
Shall I call for the question?
Yep.
Well, I had a question. Or do we want to make a motion with the condition for, or no?
You have the floor.
And we need to have 3 separate motions, 1 for each property.
Right.
Is that correct?
Is it, Michaela, is it within our purview to have a condition for 665 to have documentation of that building prior to demolition? Is that within our scope?
I'm just checking the code really quick here. And we've had some code changes, but let me just see if we don't already
So
require
let's
that. But if you have a condition, you have to tie it to a standard.
That's okay. Thanks for looking. We can start with the others.
okay.
What about conditions that preserve the house on the corner and also that little cul-de-sac property that's the second one in?
No, that would be totally outside of your scope.
We have the same thing happening in the next block. Go past Trolley Square, and you get to the next block, which is being demolished, and there's one lovely home that used to be every bloomin' thing, I think, and there are people that living there, and there are giant apartment buildings going up around them. It's the same thing happening here. This has been going on for years and years and years, and this property is going down the tube faster than any property I've seen, except over on Second South. And I have been in hearings about this for the last 10 years, so I'm ready to vote.
Let's do it. You want to make a motion?
Okay. So what I'd like to do is ask the commissioners for a motion concerning item number 2, Trolley Square Ventures, particular to the house that is at 664 East, 600 South.
I don't have the paperwork.
I motion to approve with, I motion to approve, based on the information presented and discussion, I move that the commission approve the demolition as recommended by staff.
You have to give the case number.
At motion for PLN HLC 2024-01448.
Very good. There's been a motion. Is there a
Second.
second? All right. There's been a motion and a second. It's now time to vote. Let's do so and do that in order. Babs?
In favor?
Let's see, Adrian,
Aye.
Emily,
Yeah.
Alan,
No.
and
Let's just be clear on the record, you said 64.
Yes.
And then you gave a different
Oh.
Let's do that again.
staff or
Yeah.
planning number, case number. So let's just make sure we're talking about right case number,
I
right
only have the
address.
one case number, sorry.
Rewind.
Or just clarify your motion and tie it to the address associated with case number that ends in 448.
Thank you. So this is for 652?
664.
no, we're going in
665.
order.
Oh.
This is for 664.
Okay, 664.
That's item number 2.
Oh.
Okay.
Can you give me just 2
Okay,
seconds here?
let's start from scratch.
Okay, 664 East 600 South is planned case number PLN HLC 2024-1445. Okay, that's 664 East 600 South. That's also being projected on the screen.
Oh, I should say that. Oh, so we're talking about 664 East, 600 South, case number PLNHL C2 024-01445. Good job.
Yeah.
You did it, yay. Second.
Thanks, everyone.
Very good. We're good? Thank you.
Thanks.
So let's revote, just to make certain that everything is what it's supposed to be. Babs?
Aye.
Adrian?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Alan?
No.
And I will vote as well as an aye. That is 1, 2, 3, 4 in approval and 1 against. The motion passes. Now it's time to roll into item number 3. This is 665 East Ely Place, which is also known as 632 South, 700 East. PLN HLC 2024-01447. Can I have a motion concerning that property?
Michaela, did you find anything in the code or about?
Oh, I just went to the motion sheet.
Oh, no, that's fine. Okay, you want to go?
Oh, I can
Okay,
barely,
you have it in
I
front
can
of you?
barely
Watch
read
this.
over.
This is for motion Trolley Square Ventures, the demolition of contributing principal building in a local historic district at 665 East Ely Place. It's case number PLN HLC 2024-1447. I motion to approve Based on the information presented in the discussion, I move the commission approve the demolition application as recommended by staff.
Very
Second.
good. There's been a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Very well. There's a motion to approve and a second. Let's take a vote, please. Babs?
Aye.
Adrian?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Alan?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Motion is unanimous in approval. Let's move into number 4, please. This is Trolley Square Ventures. This is the house that is at 552 East, 600 South. Can I have a motion concerning that property?
It's 652.
652
You said 55.
East, 600 South. Can I have a motion concerning that property?
I motion to approve motion PLN HLC 2024-1448 for the property 652 East, 600 South. Based on the information presented and the discussion, I move that the commission approve the demolition application as recommended by staff.
Very well, thank you. We've had a second, so there's been a motion and a second concerning this property. Now it's time to vote as well. Babs?
Aye.
Adrian?
Aye.
Emily?
Yep.
Aye, and Alan?
No.
And I will vote as well, and I'm in the affirmative. So there is 4 votes in the affirmative, 1 in the negative. The motion for property PLN HLC 2024-01448 is approved.
So we need to get John back. Where did John go? Okay. Okay, you guys can go.
Thank you.
Yes, over and over.
Thanks for leading the charge, Mike.
Hmm.
Thanks for being the MVP of
There's a lot of motions and just, a lot of practice to just,
You did great.
oh, thanks.
Do we need a break? Does anyone need a break?
I'm okay. This is not going to take long on this last one.
This is the Liberty Park.
And I'm excited for it.
I'm super excited for it.
Yeah, I mean, only 10?
I'm super excited.
Yeah, me too.
Did you announce this one? Okay.
When I saw it on the agenda, I was like, ooh, I'm really excited.
I'm all hopped up about the central fountain and canyon model. I mean,
Very nice.
I feel like that's in peril.
Finishing out the meeting tonight, we have a briefing on the Liberty Park Cultural Landscape Report and Vision Plan. This is, it doesn't have a number because it's just a briefing. So we have Catherine Sontag presenting on behalf of the city.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Sontag. I am an associate landscape architect with Public Lands. Oh, wow, that changes things. We are here tonight with our consultant, Mundus Bishop, to present an informational overview of the Cultural Landscape Report and Vision Plan that is underway, and I'll turn the time over to them.
I'm Kelly Reeve. I'm a senior planner with Mundus Bishop. The mic was off. Can you hear me now? Okay, great. So I'm Kelly Ream. I'm a senior planner with Mundus Bishop. And I'm joined by Tina Bishop, who will give an introduction of herself and our firm in a minute. So we're here today to share a little bit about the CLR and the vision plan, which we kicked off in the fall, to talk a little bit about the schedule, the process, and share some of our initial findings. And then answer any questions that you all may have.
Good evening. My name is Tina Bishop, and I'm principal with Mundus Bishop. We are a landscape architecture and planning firm who specializes in public space. A lot of our work has to do with cultural landscapes and with large urban significant parks such as Liberty Park. We've been doing work across the country in the Rocky Mountain West and are excited today to talk to you about Liberty Park. Some of our work includes work with the National Park Service, and we do look to their standards for developing cultural landscape reports, and you'll hear a little bit about that tonight from Kelly and just her talk about our firm's work on Liberty Park to date. In front of you is the team that we've put together and have been working together with. A couple of our staff, Glenn and Riley, aren't with us tonight, but have had an influence in the plan. When we move into the vision plan, and we've already started planning for this, we are working with OV consultants who are outreach experts and community engagement specialists. I know you have all had other cultural landscape reports for various parks within Salt Lake City. We see the biggest benefit of the cultural landscape as really being sort of the baseline documentation. As you know, our work on the Liberty Park has two separate projects, the cultural landscape report and also the vision plan. Tonight we're going to focus really on the cultural landscape report. So this baseline documentation for the historic design landscapes or the landscape helps ID the physical qualities of the park, but it also presents the cultural values that contribute to the significance of Liberty Park. It also informs the long-term vision of the vision plan as we move into that moving forward, and we have envisioned this to be a really great tool for the commission to evaluate future proposals within Liberty Park. Kelly's going to talk about a few of the components that are within the cultural landscape report. Very similar to what you would do in a historic structure assessment. There's a condition assessment, an analysis of integrity, and then we move into treatment, which is kind of a fancy word for planning and design when you're looking at historic landscapes. Kelly's going to share with us some of the key components of the landscape characteristics that we'll be looking at. And we're happy to answer any questions about what the CLR will cover in more detail if you have those after you hear a little bit about some of our findings.
So as I mentioned, we kicked off the process in the fall with the Cultural Landscape Report, and we're currently developing the 30% draft of the CLR. We've structured the project so that the Cultural Landscape Report and the Vision Plan inform each other. So really aligning the two planning processes so that key milestones occur at the same time. A good example of this is next week we submit the 30% report, and then we'll kick off the vision phase of both the CLR and the vision plan. And what this does is it streamlines the process with outreach too. So we can talk to staff in the community and get input on key factors that will influence both plans. And I should back up. So throughout this process, we have defined separate groups that we'll meet with, and I'll describe those groups in a little more detail. So the Technical Advisory Committee is primarily composed of internal city departments, and we will reach out to these stakeholders and subject matter experts at key points to understand their needs and really ensure that the plan is tailored to the people who will use the plan, and also that it reflects the recommendations and priorities needed to guide the management, use, improvement, and decisions for the park. The other group that we'll meet is more of an external group. This is the Community Advisory Committee. And our outreach will primarily focus on what their values and needs from this plan are to develop a shared vision. And of course, the largest group that we'll be reaching out to is the community. So these are the people who use the park every day, come to the park for special events, and also use it as a regional destination. And we understand that, outreach to this group isn't a one-size-fits-all. So we'll have diverse opportunities for them to provide input, ranging from quick online surveys that they can take, pop-up events, so that we can capture those people who traditionally, don't know that the plan is going on, and also more of the traditional open houses. So as we've been working on developing the 30% draft, we've been looking at what the period of significance would be for this cultural landscape report. And we've had conversations with city staff and also representatives from SHPO. So the existing National Register identifies a period of significance of 1800 to 1899. I should note that the park opened to the public in 1892. The nomination does highlight that any building or feature built between 1930 would be a contributing building. For the purposes of this CLR, in the 30% draft, we are recommending extending that period of significance, so having a start date of 1800 and then taking it through the year 1969. And what this does is it captures more of the resources and events that are really characteristic of Liberty Park and, reflect what makes Liberty Park Liberty Park. I think one notable resource would be the Central Promenade. Traditionally, that was a vehicular route, and then through historic aerials, we know that between the year 1950 and 1969, that central route was converted from 600 East to a pedestrian promenade. And that's certainly, when you're at the park, a character-defining feature. So we think that that's one example of a resource that's really important to include in the significance. So in addition to the historical documentation and analysis of the significance of the park, this 30% draft also includes an existing condition assessment and assessment of integrity. So Tina mentioned a few of the landscape characteristics that define the historic character of the park. I'll highlight just 3 of these, but the report will include much more detail. So the park composition of Liberty Park is significant for the items I've outlined here. This includes the central access, the alleys and groves, and those actually date to before the establishment of the park. Many of the trees in that central route was established by both Isaac Chase and Brigham Young. As the park continued to evolve throughout the period of significance, the park design really maintained and built upon those features, and they became kind of characteristic of the American Parks and City Beautiful movement associated with the park. Of course, there were additions to that park composition, including adding that loop road, and then moves to really emphasize the scenic quality of the park. That includes those curvilinear paths, views to the mountains that are framed by trees, open meadows, the enlargement of Liberty Lake with islands, and then also the pattern of distinct spaces throughout the park, which are defined by that loop road, central access, and vegetation. As the park has continued to evolve, it's really respected those patterns, and those elements are maintained and retain integrity. Another key component of the park is circulation. As I mentioned before, that central route really dates back to the platting of the city and the establishment of roads and provided primary access to the Chase Farm. It's since served as the spine of the park. Early development added in that exterior loop road and then a hierarchy of paths which created kind of a pedestrian core in the center. That pedestrian core was further reinforced by the conversion of that central route from a vehicular route to a pedestrian promenade. Again, these patterns in the hierarchy remain today. and contribute to the significance of the park. And so the final landscape characteristic I'll talk about is vegetation. When a survey was completed in 2018 for the park's master plan, respondents to the survey indicated that trees were the primary draw to the park. And I think this really reflects the significance of vegetation to Liberty Park. And that significance is also reflected in early documentation of the park. Trees planted by Chase and Young became kind of iconic elements of the city. And this was reflected in early names for the site. Before it was even a park, it was referred to as Forest Park and Locust Patch. Many of the patterns of alleys and groves that they established have been built upon, and today the alleys, groves, open meadows remain and continue to be preserved as the park evolves. So I wanted to thank you for your time. I know that was a very high-level overview of our findings, and we certainly look forward to future meetings with you all and your input.
I do have a question. In all of the work that you're doing with the park, and thank you for the report, are you finding that since the bike path that goes from the park right at the northern end all the way to Jordan River, are you seeing more use of the park by bike riders as they circle in and out and then down the path? Is that something that you've seen in your findings?
And Catherine, I'll let you.
Yes, I think that it's being more utilized with that development down further west.
I ask because I live 2 blocks east and 2 blocks north of this site and use that all the time, and I have seen quite a bit now that there's an east-west corridor. I see a lot of people circling and then going east or west on 9th South, and it's a nice addition to the ride. So, thank you.
I've seen a notice of more bikes, but I've also seen a huge increase in the unsheltered.
Mm-hmm.
More so that than the bikes, sadly.
Any other questions for staff or the consultants?
It's not a question, but I would like to say that the treatment of the homeless has been a great concern to me in our public spaces. And you said that you were going to 1969 with your window of significance. But what is really important to me is preserving the Seven Canyons Fountain. And I know that's a little tenuous right now, so I would like to speak in support of that to be maintained and preserved.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if you're aware of the current status of the redesign. Is that what you're alluding to?
I think so.
Yes, and we are in conversation and communication with that team, and very aware of it. Thank you.
So then, just curious, when the redesign is enacted, it'll change the slides to say the period of significance will extend into 2025? Because I mean, it's just very curious where you have it, what, 1959 to 1960s or so. You know, how did you determine that was the period, that was the most work and how it was used?
Great question, and lots of things that we talk about, because when I gave the introduction, I talked a lot about the physical qualities. A traditional CLR really looks at the physical qualities of a place, and what we analyze and evaluate is what point in time was the park considered fairly complete, similar to a building where you look at it and you analyze its integrity based on an understanding, does it still look the way that it would have looked at that moment in time? After '69, a lot of changes occurred within the park, many small-scale changes, the addition of some of the things that you see on here, Rice Pavilion, the tennis buildings, the swimming pool. In consultation with SHPO, they felt that it would be probably more solid to stick with the 69 deadline for that. It is also follows National Register criteria, which is another component that we look at. Having said that, and we do strongly believe that 69 is the best timeline for the period of significance. Having said that, Liberty Park is of huge cultural significance to Salt Lake City and the community. And there is a movement underfoot in historic design landscapes to look at how the cultural significance could continue on through modern day. And so the Seven Fountains, of course, has a lot of cultural significance too, even though it was built later. So within the CLR, we also have the opportunity in treatment to make sure that we think about improvements that are important culturally, and in treatment look to preserve those. And that's part of the rationale for combining community engagement. So we get a really good sense of how that extends across the community, and if there are other components that might have similar cultural significance. The Cultural Landscape Report has a category of cultural significance, and Kelly and I, we rarely use that because it usually is covered in that period of significance, but we have been talking about bringing that forward and thinking about it in more depth in this park in particular. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
To follow up on that, I am a little bit surprised. 69 seems sort of arbitrary. Although you've explained that a lot of change happened after that. I guess I would have expected that it would have been more like a 50-year, which is the National Register standard, that it would be sort of a rolling sort of period of significance that just based on it being 50 years old. So I notice here, like the Rice Pavilion, it's 1970, so that falls outside. I was just walking past that last night, and I was like, wow, it's really a great pavilion of that period, you know. But according to this, even though it's over 50 years old, then it would not be considered historically significant. Is that what I'm hearing?
Where it sits currently at 69, yes, you would be correct. We can take another look at that if you feel strongly about that, because that's why we're here, right? We're here to get your input and to understand. One of the things we also look at, in a cultural landscape report, it's usually as a period develops, it doesn't always follow National Register criteria for 50 years. So oftentimes you will see that at an earlier point in time. We've evaluated, the majority of the park was actually built by the early 1900s and didn't see a lot of change after that. The biggest change, and probably the most fundamental change, aside from the addition of some of the buildings, was really that central promenade and becoming less as a vehicular route and more of a pedestrian route. And we were very interested in ensuring that we maintained that. And that was really part of 69, picking the date for 69. We can go back and look at the Rice Pavilion a little bit more in depth. And then Kelly can also speak to master planning that happened after 69 that resulted in many of the other changes, if you want to take that one on.
Sure. So in the 1970s, there was citywide planning going on. There was parks system planning, and then there was a master plan for Liberty Park developed. And that was really in response to a lot of the challenges that the park was facing. So, there were shifts in circulation. There's actually the removal of quite a few historic structures. So, that was part of the decision of, do I draw the line at 69 or 70? That it really related to those kind of events that were going on within the park and then the larger city.
Yes, I'm a little bit wary of, I guess it's always a problem that the more recent something is, the less likely we are to see it as valuable. And so it's easy for the Rice Pavilion for a lot of people to be like, oh, God, that's just such a 1970 pavilion. Let's get rid of it and get something beautiful there. And so which is why mid-century buildings and structures are so threatened right now. And so it's always that trick of like, well, at what point do you say, well, this has been around long enough that it merits, it has become an integral part of the fabric of a place and deserves to be preserved. And so I'm always a little bit nervous.
I agree with that.
Because the stuff from the 60s and 70s right now is the stuff that is most threatened because it is the least appreciated. So.
That's good input. I think we'll take another look at Rice Pavilion. One, the challenge is when you pick a date, then one of the rationales for creating contributing versus non-contributing has to do with was it present? And that's therein lies the struggle, because then all these other components were present or modified or changed. And so that creates a little bit of a struggle. But with that said, there's also the rationale of something within that period that's of its own significance, which you're making case for the Rice Pavilion. And so there is easily sort of that component. We've struggled a little bit too, because the Central Promenade at first we thought hadn't really changed until the 80s, when the mall development happened across the country. And so I was like, we got to go to 80. And SHPO's like, no, we're not going to 1980. And then also the idea of something that is significant can have its own date in a national register. It doesn't work so cleanly in a CLR. But I think you made a good case for Rice Pavilion, and we'll go back and look at that.
So I guess I did have one more question. There was a presentation that was made before the commission concerning Pioneer Park, and there was a lot of discussion of a lot of the legacy trees at the perimeters were nearing their life expectancy. So I'm assuming that there's a plan for this park here as well to replenish those, because looking from the middle map to the current map, the trees have gotten quite a bit larger. So is there a plan to replenish as well, just so that the same thing that's happening to Pioneer Park's not happening to Liberty Park?
Yes, and if you look, what's really great about the image on the slide about the vegetation is the locust groves that you hear a lot about. You can see that pattern continue even into today. You're also talking about the alea trees down the Central Promenade. Parks has already been working in some of the more best practices of today, with really pulling lawn away from some of those large areas, adding mulch and some other components. So there's already work being done to protect the larger trees. As you mentioned, we're getting at that point in time where some of these trees are at the end of their lifespan. So we'll be looking at, with forestry, with parks, at a tree succession plan, which is a really important component of any CLR, especially of an urban park with this many trees and the types of trees. In a tree succession plan, we'll look also at what the form, character of the tree might be, because oftentimes as we're moving into the future, we're finding a better species that would do exactly the same thing that the historic tree did, but might not necessarily have to be the same species. So thank you for asking about that, and we'll be working on that as we move forward. Did you want to add anything?
It's just a lot of exciting facts, but I think that captures it. And I did breeze over that, but I think what's been really great is whenever we're out on site, we get approached because we have clipboards and people say, "What are you doing?" And they get really known that the trees are, important to them. So we've heard that loud and clear that, this is a significant resource for the city, and the trees particularly are treasured by all.
Great, thanks so much for your time tonight. With that, we're gonna close the meeting and adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you, good stuff.
Thanks.
Looking forward to seeing the rest of